So now it's time to open this webinar. So thank you very much for your participation. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everyone. So we appreciate so much your participation in this symposium on clinical trials in Ukraine and bioethics, organized by the Japan Association for Bioethics, with the support of members of the ethics working group of the International Federation of Association for Pharmaceutical Physicians and Pharmaceutical Medicine, we call IFAP. There is no any financial support to this meeting, and all the speakers and the participants are from their voluntary willingness of participation. I am Chieko Kurihara, moderator of this symposium as a member of the Japan Association of Bioethics and Ethics Working Group of IFAP. So first, I will give you administrative instruction, which I circulated to all in PowerPoint. I think all of you received it. Please make your microphone and camera off during the presentations of speakers and commentators. During a question and answer following each presentation and discussion session, please raise your hand or unmute your microphone and say your name and start comment after a moderator's instruction. So I will say, please. Whole the meeting is recorded and provided for today's participants and members of the Japan Association for Bioethics, and considering the result of the discussion, there is a possibility to be disclosed more widely in a style of a video or a journal article. Any type of disclosure of individual and identifiable information will be informed in advance to your email address of registration, and we will accept your disagreement if there is, although there is some limitation of deleting after the dissemination. So all of your comments or opinions should be possible to be open to public. After the 3 Ukrainian speakers' presentations, we will have a break of 5 minutes, expected to be at 1 hour 40 minutes from the starting. And after the break, commentators' presentations and discussion will start. So you can post your some point or some comment or information to chat, but it is not enough. There is no enough resource to read all that chat. So if there is some opinion or question, please raise your hand or make a voice. And so I would like to make my slide. I'm sorry, I forgot to show this slide. So this is a instruction I talked. And so the primary objective of this symposium, the Japanese constitution has a paragraph of eternal renunciation of war, and many of the Japanese bioethicists recognize peace and do no harm against war to be almost the core among the core principles of bioethics. We wish to strengthen the structure to support Ukrainian clinical research, as this represents an integral part of the scientific and healthcare system of the country, as well as being integral to the continued development of the society. This is a right of sovereign state, and we as a community of bioethicists and researchers have an obligation to strengthen solidarity to provide ongoing support to Ukrainian researchers and participants and patients and public. Today, we are grateful to have the Ukrainian speakers to convey the real status of their situations. So this is the secondary objectives. The Japanese bioethicists will take this precious opportunity for reflection on the bioethical implications of the current situation, considering our own historical experience of both of aggression in other countries, as well as being attacked by weapons of mass destruction during World War II. The international participants will expand our ongoing discussions for publication of scientific papers considering international guideline development, addressing research and ethics in conflict and other disruptive situations. So this is a profile of participants. There are participants from these countries, and many are medical professionals and researchers, but most of them are bioethicists, and others are bioethicists of non-medical professionals. So for the opening, Chiaki Kagawa, Professor Emeritus at Yamanashi University and Representative Director of the Japan Association for Bioethics, will have opening remarks. And after one commentator to provide a message bridging from the previous webinar to this one, 3 Ukrainian speakers will provide a presentation. And after taking a break, 4 commentators will make comments, and all the participants have discussions. So I will stop my sharing. And so Professor Kagawa, please have your greetings.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everybody. I will read my paper. As the representative director of the Japan Association for Bioethics, JAB, I am pleased that the JAB will host this important international workshop under the title of a Symposium on clinical trials in Ukraine and bioethics. The Russian attack on Ukraine has not only shocked people around the world, but it continues to have a dismal effect on many aspects of people's lives. Around the world, people have been shocked and dismayed by this war. Scientists, public health officials, ethicists, and people generally are becoming increasingly aware of issues in clinical research that have become more challenging and urgent than previously thought. Ukraine and Russia still hold large positions internationally as places where clinical researches are conducted. Big pharmaceutical companies with global activities are conducting a large number of clinical studies in both countries, as are to smaller and equally important investigator-driven studies. The international community, as well as the national and local communities, have benefited from the valuable work in clinical trials conducted in Ukraine and Russia. However, the recent military conflict has made it extremely difficult to continue clinical studies in both countries. The current changes will have a direct impact not only on Ukraine, but also on the international community. First and foremost, we need to understand the situational challenges of research in this disruptive situation. This includes the ethical challenges as well as the challenges arising in trial conduct and logistics. In this symposium, we will explore the current situation of clinical research in Ukraine from the perspective of ethics. we will ask what this very new situation of conflict means for the ethics of clinical research internationally and what we need to learn from it. Furthermore, we need to think about how clinical research should be conducted scientifically and ethically in the limited situation about in the limited situation of war, based on an appreciation of the current situation. It is not just the special issues related to extreme situations, such as war, that need to be considered. Considering the universal conditions required for clinical research itself, regardless the situation, should be indispensable even when we are in the extreme situation of war. In an exceptionally fraught situation, fraught with many new problems, it is difficult to find the direction that the international community should take in response to the clinical research situation in Ukraine today. However, in order to grasp such a difficult perspective, we should be able to provide solid clues based on both the recognition of current state of clinical research in Ukraine and a broader consideration of the role the clinical research enterprise plays in our societies today. It is our hope that this symposium on clinical research in Ukraine will help us to have a better understanding of the role of ethics in research during conflict situations, as well as the responsibility of the international science and ethics communities in providing adequate responses. On behalf of my colleague at the JAP, I look forward to welcoming you to this symposium. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your important message. So next, Courtney Granville, United States, will have a short comment as she organized an excellent series of webinars by Drug Information Association. So Courtney, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you to you, Chieko, and to the IFAPP and the Japan Association of Bioethics for inviting me to be part of this symposium and share the work that DIA has been doing to raise awareness and really capture key learnings and strategies that have been gleaned from the response of the clinical trials and research enterprise to ensure not just continuity of research and the continuity of the Ukraine research infrastructure, but also ongoing care for many, many patients. As you said, I'm here from DIA. We're a multidisciplinary organization. We are neutral, and we try to use that neutral platform to educate and convene stakeholders to solve problems and ensure the integration of innovation into our clinical trials and clinical research continuum. Beginning much earlier this year, back in March of 2022, I was actually at our Europe annual meeting where our stakeholders talked to us about bringing forward the conversation around the impact of the invasion in Ukraine. And so beginning in May, we started to organize a webinar series, recognizing that the war really brought with it an unprecedented crisis in clinical trials and research. And we saw that we could use our platform to share experiences and up-to-date information, and also really to unite the international clinical research community around what they needed to do to develop local, regional, and global responses. Going beyond that, also about preparedness for disruptive events, and to create a lasting output and impact that could really guide response in the future. And so starting those webinars back in May actually enabled a connection to the Ukraine Clinical Research Support Initiative. And so working with this group, which is led by Francis Crawley, Victoria Dubrova, Mark Turner, and Beata Aric, I think names that are not unfamiliar to this group, we were able to bring this important discussion forward through another 6 webinars with many, many expert speakers, about 600 different registrants and participants in the webinars. And we covered the regulatory response to the war, the needs that exist for streamlining future guidance and good clinical practice guidelines to apply in conflict situations, ethical considerations to prioritize, support, and protect study participants who have been impacted, and specifically also the impact of the war on cancer clinical trials and on patients living with rare disease. So we covered quite a breadth. And the webinars really highlighted not just the resilience of the clinical research enterprise in the region, but also highlighted the need to really think differently about clinical trials and research in our current ecosystem, so we can preserve its ability to innovate and bring solutions forward to patients even in times of crisis. In fact, really, the conflict has highlighted the critical societal importance of research and its role in maintaining both health and economic prosperity. So we're now actually working as a team with IFAPP and the UCRSI and many experts to publish the findings and recommendations that emerge from our conversations in publications, including our magazine called The Global Forum, which anyone can access, and we'll be continuing to have follow-up conversations and discussions. So thank you again, Kieko, for having me, and in this symposium, I look forward to a really robust morning of discussion.
Thank you very much for your important comment. And as Courtney mentioned, Francis Crawley is an important commentator, one of the commentators today. He will provide his comment after the presentation of Ukrainian speakers. And Francis established this initiative, international initiative to support Ukrainian clinical trial. And other members of the IFAP will have a presentation and we'll have a comment. And today's special guest, Dr. Jerry Benikoff, coming from the United States Human Subject Protection Office, will have a comment after the 3 speakers from Ukraine. So from here, we will listen to the voices of Ukrainian speakers. We appreciate so much that they prepared their presentations during the current extremely difficult situations. So first speaker is Victoria Dubrova, a professor of Department of Clinical Pharmacology and Clinical Pharmacy and Vice Chairperson, Research Ethics Committee of Clinical and Diagnostic Center, National University of Pharmacy, Kharkov. So Victoria, please share your slide and start your presentation.
Thank you, Cheiko. Hello, everyone. I try to share my slides. Yeah. Is it okay? Do you see my slides?
Yes, okay.
Okay. Dear colleagues, dear participants, I'm grateful to, first of all, to Japan Association of Bioethics, its representative director, Professor Kagawa, and personally Professor Cheika Kurihara, for such a great opportunity to present information about ethical review system of Ukraine and the influence of war at our system. Also, my grateful words for Professor Francis Crowley for his willingness and initiative to support of clinical trial in Ukraine in this devastating time, and his great energy, spent time, and brilliant ideas. I want to note and say warmest greetings for DIA team and especially Courtney Granville for the opportunity to use DIA platform during all of summer, and we can share and discuss different issues in clinical trials which rise during Russian aggression in Ukraine. Ukraine is a huge European country. You see our population, it's more than 41 million population of Ukraine. But Ukraine is a low middle income country. You see a GDP of Ukraine per capita in 2021 is only $2,500. It's not a big GDP, so it's very important to spend this money in a proper way. And of course, for healthcare system, if we find some good ways to find other monies for our healthcare system, for support our patients to find some new medicines, it's very good, because current health expenditure as shared of DGP in 2019 was only 7%, and this is data according to to WHO data, and this 7% includes out-of-pocket money and of course government money. So we need a good money, good support for our healthcare system, for our patients. So that's why clinical trials as one of such source of monies, of proper monies, of proper support of our healthcare system for Ukraine is very important. If we will speak about regulation authority of clinical trials of our Ukrainian regulation authority, first of all, this is the Ministry of Health of Ukraine. They are our regulation authority, and the state enterprise, state expert center of the Ministry of Health of Ukraine. This organization is doing all expertise, assessment, improvement of all protocols of clinical trials in Ukraine. And how was the clinical trials before war, before this active invasion, not before war, but before this active invasion in Ukraine? At the time of the beginning of the active invasion of Russia on 24th of the February of this year, there were exactly nearly 800 clinical trials, 794 clinical trials, and all these clinical trials had been approved by State Expert Center of Ministry of Health of Ukraine and included in our Ministry of Health order, so they were approved by our authority and our Research Ethics Committee. I'll show how we work, our research system work just a little later. And 584 clinical trials had started at that moment, and they had conducted, and there was a different phase. There were different phases of clinical trials: first, second, third phases. And I want to say that near 85–90% of these clinical trials were from international organization, international sponsors. So they were multi-center clinical trials, and sponsors of them were international pharmaceutical companies and biomedical companies, international. And at that moment of 24th of February, 210 clinical trials had been approved by the Ministry of Health, and they were prepared for the launch. I think you know that process of launch of clinical trials, this is a long time process. This is not only one day or one moment. So of course, all these clinical trials were prepared, clinical sites prepared, sponsors, contract research organizations prepared to conduct these clinical trials at that moment. And I want to say that our State Expert Center is very active from the first day of war. Persons who participate in our DIA webinars, they know that Taisa Hirasimchuk, director of department, presented this data about and presented work of our State Expert Center. So of course, this situation, this devastated situation, first days we of course we didn't know what to do, but from the first decade of March, our State Expert Center started to find some solutions how to support our clinical trials, how to help our investigators, how to help our sponsors, contract research organization, and how to find important decisions, first of all, for our research subjects, for our patients. And I want to emphasize that today I will not speak about investigator-initiated clinical trials. I will speak most of all about clinical trials which are sponsored by pharmaceutical and biomedical companies, so like commercial clinical trials. Because we in Ukraine we have, of course, clinical trials which we call investigator-initiated, but we don't call them clinical trials. We call them clinical research, and it means that these research are not inversion research, not we don't study during the such research non-registered, non-approved medicines. During investigator-initiated clinical trials in Ukraine, usually this is the science research, and we don't speak today about such research. This is other topic for discussion, and this topic is much more close for how science of Ukraine working, medical science of Ukraine working, and this topic need other materials. So today I will take your attention about only clinical trials which are sponsored by pharmaceutical and biomedical companies. And you see why we speak so carefully and with big we pay so big attention for clinical trials in Ukraine, because you see from these clinical trials 25% of them, this is oncological clinical trials. So during these clinical trials, very important for for humanity drugs are studied, and this information is very important about the activity, about efficacy, about safe of these drugs. So you see why how clinical trials in Ukraine distribute according to nosology, and you see that other important disease for all humanity, this psychological disease, neurological disease, gastroenterology disease, rheumatology, pulmonology, endocrinology, and cardiology disease. This is the main part, and hematology disease. This is the main part of our field of our clinical trials in Ukraine. So, of course, data from this research very important, not only for Ukrainian patients, but for many patients in the whole world, and for many pharmaceutical companies, and for, of course, for healthcare professionals. It's very important. And if we come back to our normative and legislative documents which Ukraine have now and work now, you can see that we work with all important basic normative documents of European Union, and of course world documents such as the Declaration of Helsinki, WHO recommendations, of course guidelines, SIOMS guidelines. Of course we use all these documents for a review of clinical trials in Ukraine. And it's not happens only today. We use these documents during last 2 decades. During last 2 decades, our system of clinical trials developed, and many new documents and were audit, were changed some of these documents. So there are a lot of documents which are completely harmonized with European Union documents, with world documents for improvement, for assessment of clinical trials. So Ukraine is completely goes in the way of European Union and whole world according to protections of human rights, first of all. And of course, quality of clinical trials is very important for us, for researchers, for sponsors, for ethics committee, of course, for our authority, Ministry of Health and State Expert Center. So you see that we have first of all law on medicines. We have 2 main orders. These orders amended, and these orders are completely involved all topics which are in ICA-GCP. And I want to say that from the last year, our State Expert Center is the member of ICH community, ICH organization, and members of our State Expert Center, they participate in meetings of ICH. It's very important for future harmonization of our system. And again, I present you information which were designed Sergei Rasputniak, head of GCP and GLP audit department of State Expert Center. And you can see at this slide that how our basic normative and legislative documents, how they are connected and how they are the same with main documents, world documents. So you see that our Ukrainian law of medicines include two articles, Article 7 and 8, about clinical trials of medicines and protection of the patients' rights, volunteers' rights, which want to participate in clinical trials. Our main orders, which regulate our clinical trials, they are the same. They include main topics, procedures, which are in Directive 2001/20. So they are oriented on this document. And of course, guidelines, ICH, good clinical practice, with all amendments which now are done for ICH GCP guidelines. So this is presentation of our regulation system for clinical trials. And I want to say, and I want to emphasize that clinical studies approval process, this is a parallel process. Our authority, Ministry of Health of Ukraine, after review of State Expert Center and after local REC review, take decision independently and approximately at the same time. So our authority makes their own review of clinical trial, and our local REC makes own review of these clinical trials. And when both of them give improvement, after that clinical trial should be started in a clinical site. What interesting yet in our research ethics system. In general, research ethics system in Ukraine can be described as decentralized system with a lot of local RECs. You see more than 400 local RECs exist in Ukraine. And for participation in clinical trials as a research center, each clinical trial site must have a working research ethics committee. We call them research ethics committee. I know that USR calls them institutional review board, but we call them research ethics committee. Ukraine does not have central ethics committee, therefore RECs are completely independent and have self-management. This is not good, this is not bad, this is our only situation, our local situation. And what very interesting and very important, participations in research ethics committee is voluntary and non-payment duty for members of research ethics committee. What I want to say yet, this is that a combination of list of members of research ethics committee is completely according ICH GCP norms, so minimal 5 people, one of them non-employee, one of them non-researcher and non-medical person. So this is a rule is working, and this is a rule is in our orders, so we have such rule. And we have a good support. Our research ethics system, our research ethics committees have a very good support from State Expert Center. And sometimes we have a weak interaction between different tracks, but we have a perfect interaction with state expert center. So each research ethics committee can call to a department, special department, and ask some questions if they have questions, and get help, get support from specialists, from professionals, from state expert center. Our research ethics review system, you see, has 4 capstones. Sponsor is, of course, responsible for protection of participants subject. Of course, researcher is responsible for willingness and well-being and health of study subjects. State expert center control this situation and control all data of our research. And of course, the research ethics committee, local research ethics committee, should get all information about all situation in trial site and about all data, adverse events, different transforming of patients, and other many informations local research committee get and do this protection. And this is important, fourth important capstone for protection of trial subjects. I want to present you some small research data about our education, because in Ukraine we pay attention not only to get money from sponsors and to do some study in unknown way, without quality, without goodness, without protection of patients. No, we don't do it. Many years ago, we had different short-term programs, and near 4 years ago, we opened a master educational program, clinical research. And during this process of opening this process, we studied, me and my team, we studied a lot of curriculums. We studied Harvard curriculum for clinical research professionals, and we do surveys for our researchers, for our principal investigators, members of REC, clinical research coordinators, and many other persons who are involved in conducting of clinical trials. So you see the data of some assessment, their their competency in different questions, and you see that all of them have a good competency. Most of them have a good competency, more than 60% competency, according ethical questions, and they want to study these questions and pay attention to get new knowledge and to study it during additional educational program, clinical research for clinical research professional master degree educational program. We designed this curriculum. We oriented of Harvard curriculum, and you see, for us, very important to protect, first of all, our subjects, and then get a good data, good information for sponsors, for future future assessment of efficacy and quality of medicines, new medicines, and for healthcare system. And other one that I wanted and show you that we not only worked as practical professionals during all this time together with State Expert Center, with Sergei Rasputnyak, Dr. Sergei Rasputnyak, together with some our contract research organizations members, and of course together with our friends from different countries, from first of all United States and Vilnius, Lithuania, from Latvia, from Kazakhstan. We participate in two big such science projects. One is identifying and addressing challenges of effective functioning in Ukrainian research ethics system. You see, and we assessed how our ethics system worked in that time. And as a result of this project, improvement of working of our State Expert Center, new recommendations, which I showed you before. You saw these recommendations on one of the first slides. It was a result of this work. Other one project during COVID-19 starting, I participate in big project. Thank you, Francis Crowley. He involved me in this project, and we do a good assessment how our review ethics system transformed, did and worked during COVID in that time when we saw this pandemic situation, when we get such challenges, how to change our work. And I want to say that this project help us and help our research community to understand how we can do and prepared to work in online working, to electronical documents sending, and this project and this time helped us how we can work in such situation in which we are now. And if we come back to our topic of how this war influence of our clinical trial system and research ethics system in Ukraine, I want to show you the distribution of clinical trials to Ukrainian sites before war. And you see, before war, there more than 68% of clinical trials were in eastern Ukrainian regions. And of course, you see, if we have such a big quantity of clinical trials, such a big number of clinical trials in eastern Ukraine regions, you understand that from the first days, and Professor Evgeny Levenko shows you how it was from the first day. This is sites see a Russian aggression, and they should to make something, to do some steps to react it of this situation. So after 24 of the February, many clinical trials which were conducting in these regions were at risk of stopping. Of course, many of clinical sites were closed. Some of them were destroyed, and some of them occupied it even now. Some investigators and subjects had to escape. And you understand that our system have to quickly react at this situation and try to find best decision how to manage such situation. And of course, most important task in this time and now is task how to protect our trial subjects. And you see, first of all, it was a transfer of clinical trial subjects. And you see this transfer, how this transfer distributed according to nosology. You see the most of all, this is oncology patients. They removed to different eastern regions of Ukraine, and they moved to other countries. Of course, the neurology patients, they moved, and rheumatology, gastroenterology patients, and hematology and cardiology patients, they moved in eastern part of Ukraine and in different countries. A number of patients that moved into eastern part of Ukraine is 156, and other countries, other European Union countries, these 245 patients were moved in these regions. And transfer distributions of these patients in different countries. First of all, Poland, our nearest neighbor. Poland took active work and actively started to move these patients, to give them opportunity. Poland signed new recommendations, GCP community of Poland, so they reacted very quickly. Other countries, Germany, you see that Germany take active part to move our participants, and as I know, some of participants get a opportunity to participate in clinical trials in Germany, in German research centers, or to prolong their participants in their own clinical trials, but in centers of Germany. And other countries like Czech Republic, Spain, Moldova, Italy, France, and other one countries, you see these distributions. And when we speak about how in philosophical or how in existential way our this war influence for our research system, and what we need to decide now. Of course, research ethics system of Ukraine faced, and not only all Ukraine, all research ethics system of whole world faced unprecise and challenge which this war give and brought for all our community. We see clearly, and this is that part of glide which we see, what we should do. This is typical organizational issues experienced by Ukrainian clinical trial community research ethics. And this is a challenge, of course, has a lot of uncertainty, complex, and of course ethical dilemmas. We clearly see that the assessment of risk and benefits for research subjects should be implemented first of all. This is that part of iceberg that we see, of glide that we see. We need this instrument of risk benefit assessment, but we not clear see, and we have some difficulties to clarify by herself, but we need to clarify strategic consequences and how we will feel a long-term impact of this situation of war in Ukraine for all clinical trial system in the world. What ethics strategic consequences and long-term ethical impact we should consider and predict, and perhaps prevent them in future. So what I see, what is our thoughts about issues of research ethics review during the war. This is the key issues experienced by Research Ethics Committee were those related to the process of ethics review and monitoring. Because of a lack of experience of working under the bombs of missiles, our members of research ethics committees, they don't have such criteria, and I think no one in the world don't have such criteria how to work and do clinical trials and conduct clinical trials in such devastating situations. And for example, today our infrastructure in different cities, civilian infrastructure, again were bombed and were under the missiles, completely civilian infrastructure under the missiles of Russia troops. And our regs do not have criteria for assessment of patients' risk for research procedures and estimations of feasibility to continue such studies. As a big problem to organize their reg meetings and their members' communications. I told that many of members of REX are the employees of these hospitals via that clinical trial sites working. So they may be in other countries. They need to procedures. They need to regulations, how to work and how to guarantee assuring transparency, how to do remote work. So Research Ethics Committee needs to develop procedure that ensure Research Ethics Committee members' safety, of course, and data confidentiality and conditions of lacking electronic data flow. Of course, transparency in conditions of remote work and compliance with review deadlines. All these tasks are big challenge for volunteer work, which research ethics review is. Now, Research Ethics Committee of Ukraine need to consider a special ways for ethical monitoring, employing mostly remote methods by constantly evaluating possible risk to safety for Research Ethics Committee members, study participants, and of course, ensure proper human subjects protection and in such a difficult circumstance. Very critical questions is how to monitor and protect research subject rights in this situation when some research subjects are in a different country, in different site. So we need a coordination between such site, interchange by this information, and of course other one very, very difficult and critical questions: how to monitor and protect research subject rights on the trial sites that occupied by Russia, and how to manage interaction between these clinical sites. And taking this to account, it is pretty hard to avoid excessive burden to Ukrainian Research Ethics Committee, which has not been considered in any recommendations. So effective organization of Research Ethics Committee work still to be a big question now in Ukraine research ethics system. And last but not least is the informed consent problem. Some of potential subjects cannot give consent in usual way. Some subjects cannot get new information about changing of informed consent. Some of the subjects which are in transformed or were transformed in different countries, they get informed consent subject in different language. How we should organize the translation of these informed consent? How we can organize to support understanding of this subject, such this informed consent in this situation. In such cases, the witness is obliged to sign and indicate the data on the document, and the researcher must indicate in the primary documentations how the impartial witness was selected. Many investigators used calls and remote technologies to obtain consent with further setting and further signing in the first possibility. We don't have a clear rule how to do according to electronic signing. But it is important to mention that investigators were provided this a pretty flexible framework that reduce the barriers for ongoing and new trials. On the other hand, the risk for violation of informed consent quality must be avoided. So we see different questions: how to work with surrogate informed consent, how to work with delay informed consent, how our research ethics committee should assess these informed consent. Because I want to say very, very trustfully that our research ethics committees don't have a big experience to work with surrogate informed consent or with delay informed consent and to do review of such informed consent. So it's very, very delicate questions and very important questions, how to clarify these topics, first of all for our research ethics committee members and for whole clinical trials review system. And of course, in these situations, all our investigators try to do in the best way to avoid the additional visits of subjects in clinical sites for additional signing of informed consent or of data checking. Our investigators do in the best way for our patients, for our research subjects, to protect them, to get this data in remote way. But I think you understand that it's a very big issue for ethical control. How is it in good way? Is it not good way? And quality of such data is very important and very big issue for all review system. I want to say that again, come back to our State Expert Center. Our authority, our state authority and State Expert Center, from the first day of war, they gave recommendations, and such recommendations for sponsors, how to work in this situation, some recommendations for ethics committee. Of course, if ethics committee, clever ethics committee and responsible ethics committee member open sponsor recommendations, they should understand that they are the same participants of protection of human rights as sponsor, and they are responsible for this protection, so they can use, of course, these recommendations for sponsors, and of course then can ask clarifications from a State Expert Center how to work in this situation, and use past recommendations and get new recommendations. Of course, our State Expert Center do recommendations for sponsors. They presented it in open space in their site, and they clearly recommended to use European Union, European Medicine Agency recommendations, and they gave a link at their site so everyone can open these recommendations and work according to these recommendations and do reviewing according to these recommendations. And I want to emphasize your attention on these main topics: that responsibility of sponsors for assessing of feasibility of new clinical trials, and of course patients recruitment, provision of possibility patients transfer to another trial site in Ukraine or in other countries. Of course, measure and ensure of provision of investigational medical product. How is it possible to do it or not possible? And of course, Research Ethics Committee, if they want to do assessment of new protocol or amendments of protocol, they of course should to do and can use these recommendations, this algorithm, and optimize their work according to these recommendations. And of course, optimization of communication process, Research Ethics Committee can use, and we recommend use to such recommendations like a first basic step to do a reviewing in good way. That's why we say that you can use this, and why we don't. Of course, we want to get our own ethics recommendation, but in this situation, when we don't have a lot of resources, when we are in under the pressure of bombing and missiling, it's very important to get some recommendations. And if we have these recommendations, we can start it from this and to move forward to do a new recommendations exactly for ethics committee. But now very important to organize our work and use, for example, these recommendations. And what main questions, what questions taking into account these national recommendations? And of course, we need urgent to adapt the range of our procedures, particularly related to remote work of REC members, the use of online applications, criteria for study protocols, new special checklists, new SOPs, effective communication, and all these aspects requires training, support, funding, and of course communications between RECs, not only of Ukraine but RECs of different countries. It's very important to get such support and to do this communication. And what risk of global risk of ethical review during war, of this risk of acceleration, risk of inappropriate ethical review, what we have in global way? Despite the public health emergency in these situations, and despite of these disaster situations, Research Ethics Committee should keep in mind and be very careful about huge risk of accelerated or inappropriate ethical review that involve a range of possible problems as conflict of interest, therapeutic misconception of trial participants, because of course we want to look of our patients and help them, but sometimes it's very close to therapeutic misconceptions. Of course, lack of RECs training in review such studies doesn't help to do these studies in a good, to do this review in a good way. In this situation, potential pressure of RECs and their decision is growing up and increasing this potential pressure, because everyone wants to get a benefit for society, for potential benefit for society, and very, very easy to take a wrong decision to the urgency of consideration, to taking in mind only potential benefit to society, and this potential benefit to society can be privileged under the risk for this participant, not some unknown participant, unknown person, but this completely this person. And a very big problem, this is a low cooperation between different research ethics committee inside of Ukraine. Of course, when participants moved into another side, our research ethics committee from two sides should interact and change information about this patient, this participant. But low cooperation between REACs is still a great problem for Ukraine. And of course, this problem, other problem is connected is poor communication and insufficient transparency. Today we not have clear roadmap how to take into account all mentioned issues and how to improve in our research ethics system. But we need to think about it, and I think it's very important to find this decision for such issues. And last slide, I want to show you pictures of our artist Victoria Naumova. She presented through a face of woman that cities which I showed you before, where our clinical trials conducted. Kharkiv, my native city, lovely Kharkiv, Mariupol, completely crushed. Zaporizhia is now under the bomb. Dnipro, Ternopil, Lugansk, Lviv. And you see that why we are speaking about clinical trials, not in Ukraine, not in past, why we speaking about clinical trials in future, because all our community, all our society, all our people of Ukraine, we are doing and we are fight for our future, for our future generation. And we think that our future is so bright, independent, our freedom is very important, important for us and for all world. Because now we are protect our society, our country, and our people protect not only democracy and choice of Ukraine. We protect democracy and choice and independence and liberty of the world. And I believe that in the nearest future, I can present you information about our clinical trials, about our research ethics system, and show not these pictures, some of them very strong pictures. You see, we not only protect, we fight for our future. And I believe that in nearest future, we get this win, and we can present new and new clinical trials in our country. And as a last word of my presentation, I want to cite a word of Spanish philosophy, George Santayana, and this word, I like this phrase: those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. So in this situation, I think very important that we learn our history, that we study our history, and do in the best way to not repeat this history again. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Victoria, for your very excellent presentation. And we learned so much from your presentation, that the excellent clinical trial system and the ethics committee system in Ukraine. And there are many problems under the extremely difficult situation. Thank you very much for your talk. And if there is a question from the participants, I'd like to ask you to unmute or raise your hand. Is there any question from the participant? Yes, Francis, please. Francis, please unmute.
Thank you. Thank you, Kyoko. And Victoria, I thought that was brilliant. Every time you present, it gets even better and better. It was so clear. It was so evident. I mean, you made it so evident. And you gave us real direction. Victoria, could you say in just a few words, just like a summary of what you said, what should we be doing now?
Francis, I can answer these questions in long time and very short. And it's very, for me, it's very philosophical questions. What we should do now for our research community, I think we are doing now very important thing that we discuss this topic for all world, not only inside Ukraine or not only between Ukrainian people. We discuss this in all world, and we try to find a decision and how to manage it in the best way. So I think this is for ethics review system, for clinical trial system, all that we do, I think, very important, and this information which get people now in all world is very important, like for clinical trial system. But if we will speak in how to manage all this situation, I just want to ask all people in the world, I know that many people now says we are tired, we have some problems with, we afraid nearest winter, we afraid nearest heating season, for example, in Western Europe. We afraid that it will, our economy will crash. We afraid that it's not good way. In this way, I want to just repeat words of one of US senators. He said, if Russia stopped, war will stop. If Ukraine stop fighting, Ukraine will stop. As country, as people, as so Ukraine can't stop fighting. So if a community and all world find power to protect, to support, not protect, we protect ourselves. I saw my last slide, you saw not only protection of our future, we fight for our future. So in this way, in such more philosophical way, don't be tired, believe in Ukraine, believe in our army, believe in our people, and you will see we can manage in a good way, and we meet each other in the next year, in the next year in Kiev, in our good big conference which we participated with you, Francis, from State Expert Center. We will discuss how to improve our system, how to drive our system in European Union system according to regulation 134. Believe us and support us. Sorry for long answer.
Thank you very much for this very important questions and answer. And I would like to invite you to Japan after the end of the war. And Yes, our power is so weak to stop this unacceptable situation, but what we can do is to strengthen our solidarity and friendship and connection among our research community and as well as the bioethicist community. So next, Chandra is raising her hand. This will be the last question for Victoria. So Chandra, please.
Yes, Victoria, thank you very much for your excellent lecture, giving us a lot of aspects of the problem. I would like to ask whether under such situation, wouldn't it be better to have one national ethics committee? In Hungary, we have one national ethics committee for all the clinical trials in which new non-registered drugs are used. My question is, under such a stress, like it happens in Ukraine, wouldn't it be much easier to work with one central ethics committee? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sander, for your question. We, many years ago, maybe 15 years ago, we have one central ethics committee, but according to our legislation, it's impossible. In that law that I show you in our Ukrainian law of medicine, include articles that local ethics committee, local people should protect. In these situations, to make a one ethics committee which will do only work, I don't think of in such situation it's the best way. Maybe in future when war will finish, it will be good if fund a coordination center, as we started to do with Sergei Rasputnyak. In 2018, we started such program with them after our research, after we find some challenges, issues of our system. We started to do this work, but now it's not very good because, you know, in our, according to our legislation, ethics committee, it's not payment organization. For people which are independent, for people which are sit in this local place, it's much easy to understand is this center is good for clinical trials, because this is a local people. They see inside this clinical trial site, they see their own patients. So now it's much more important to just give them help and to just give them support. And as I know, if it's my experience, if we have questions, we easy called to send expert center. They never say, no, it's not our questions. We did not help you. So
Okay,
in these situations, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It will be the point of consider for future discussion. So thank you very much, Victoria. So we'd like to go to the next speaker, Dr. Evgeny Levenko. He is working at the Arencia Exploratory Medicine in Kyiv. So could you share your slide?
Do you see my slide?
Okay, please start.
Yeah, thank you so much, organizer for Japanese Association for Bioethics, and personally to you, Professor Heiko Kurihara, for inviting me for such important conference. You see that today, this morning was really horrible in Kyiv. I'm basically now directly in Kyiv, in our capital of Ukraine. We have a very long and significant attack by Russians. Unfortunately, we have some victims here in Kyiv and some buildings destroyed, but our power, our spirit became only stronger. In fact, we now also have the next alert, and it's just started. Basically, in fact, we should all go to shelter. It was special recommendation to do not ignore any alerts those days. But anyway, I will continue, and you see that life during the war We are trying to create some recommendations to find the way how to do the business, how to manage our patients, how to proceed with studies. But every day we have some corrections, and today we have such examples. In our clinic, for example, we had around 10 patient visits, and some of them we did in shelter. Some visits been cancelled. So you see that during the war, recommendations are very well, but life is not that easy. But anyway, let me continue with my presentation. So I would like to share our experience from the very, very beginning of the war till today. So few words about our company. It's a German-based company with network of research clinics in Eastern and Central Europe. We have operations in Romania, Moldova, Georgia, Ukraine, and now we opened some units in Bulgaria and United States. Our company is concentrated, and our main focus is early development. We are doing 90% of our studies is phase 1 and phase 2 studies. In Ukraine, we are present since year 2017. We had 3 research clinics here. We had, in the very beginning of the war, oncology one, and multi-therapeutical research clinic. I am right now here in this clinic. And also since year 2020, we opened 1 more clinic, especially for the COVID trials. Before the war, we have 86 employees here, including 28 study physicians, 12 nurses, 5 pharmacists. At that time, we've been doing around 50 studies, 20 of them been recruiting. We managed to have almost 300 patients, and in average, we had 30 patient visits per day. It's just to show you the map where we are, where we've been before the war. Our oncology clinic located a little bit outside of Kiev, and I link it to Bucha because everybody in the world now knows this city. It was like a resort-like city outside Kiev, very nice in forest, a lot of lakes, and this is horrible story about civilian victims there after liberation. So our oncology unit is only 12 kilometers from that city. Multi-therapeutical and COVID clinics are in downtown of Kiev. It's 15 kilometers from Bucha. So all of us woke up on 24th of February, and of course we all heard and been directly in the epicenter of start of the war. We've been attacked, and of course it's a lot of thoughts came to the brain. Our company been prepared somehow to the war. We created a business continuation plan, but how it's applied, because when you hearing those explosions, of course, first of all, you're thinking about your family, children, and about your personal things. All business been immediately collapsed. All local labs stopped operations, been no couriers, no transportation, even pharmacies, shops been closed, and it was full disaster here. All our sponsors we used to work in the time stopped studies, but how to stop patient care? Normally, my working day starts at 7 o'clock, and it takes me only 30 minutes to get to the clinic from the home. But on the morning on 24th, it took me around 4 hours just to get to the clinic. And you see that we had a meeting and decided to continue our patient care. because that time we had hundreds of patient calls with the question, will you continue with us? Will you look after us? Will you support us? So we decided to stay here, in fact, and to continue research and patient care. Of course, without regulation, without our regulatory authority, as Victoria said, it's our state expert center of Ministry of Health. They provided full support to clinics like we are, and they issued a recommendation what to do in this during the war. First version of recommendation been published on the 1st of March, and for us it was a very important point. We've been in full contact with regulator, in full contact, and coordinated our steps. So just to shortly explain what been published, of course, first of all, safety of the patient should be kept. So everybody, sponsors, investigators, the first priority, of course, is safety of the patients. By this regulation, shifting of the patients to other locations been approved, and we used this point very well. I will explain you later about that. Consenting of the patients, you see even remote consenting been approved, and before the war I was thinking about that, dreaming about that, but you see that after the breakdown of the war, it became reality. Also for phone contacts instead of visit, if patient can't come to the center, it's also been possible. And of course, everything should be considered from ethics point of view. This is situation on the 24th of March, just to show you how the Russians been close to Kiev. Green is territory of Kiev, you see, and red here. This is the closest distance they came to Kiev, and you see that our oncology clinic appeared on the occupied territory. So, what's happened with our clinics? As I said in the very beginning, there were 12 people here in our main clinic, but the oncology unit appeared in the area of severe battles, and it's been occupied for 3 weeks. There were no electricity there for almost 1 month. Road been destroyed completely. No internet connection, no mobile phone. So in fact, we lost our connection with our unit, and our staff had no chance to get to have access to the clinic. So for temporarily we had no access to source documentation for our PK samples, investigator medical products, and no meetings of local ethics committee because they don't have electronic submission, for example. Fortunately, after liberation, it's been 15th of April, I and several members of our team visited our clinic, and we at least recovered all source documentation in being not touched by Russians. This is some pictures you can see. This is our clinic. You see some signs of the severe attacks, broken windows, but in general, building itself survived. This is the parts of missiles directly on the back side of the clinic. So, and this is the door to our unit, closed by chair. You see that horrible scenes. So about our downtown, our main clinic, in fact, and this part fortunately been never occupied by Russians. We have no single day, no single minute of interruption of electricity it was also, I also been surprised by that, but this is a reality. So no blackouts here in our clinic. Nothing with water supply, centrals heating, so everything fine with mobile connections, internet. So we've been in full contact with authorities, with our sponsors. It's a lot of discussion, what to do, how to continue. It was really, really hot days full of work. So we haven't stopped our operations here. As I said earlier, 12 medical providers, medics, doctors, pharmacists, nurses stayed here. We, myself, my medical director, we for 2 months we stayed in our basement. So during the night we just came down to the basement, and in the morning we started our work in our clinic. So nothing happened with source documentation, of course, PK samples, everything fine with IMP. Local labs became on some point restarted the operation, so it was day by day changing in order. So we got some support from local laboratories, and on some point also couriers restarted the operations. And for us, we start to be able to receive and ship goods out of Ukraine and receive medications and supplies to our hospital. Local ethics committee has not interrupted, so we have we just changed from face-to-face meetings to online meetings. And fortunately, in our SOPs, we have also option of electronic submission, so we the sponsors used very well this option. And again, as Victoria said, and I can confirm that our regulator, State Expert Center, will also fully operational, and we got even 4 approvals for studies we submitted before the war. This is some examples. This is our shelter downtown, downstairs in our clinic. So we've been sleeping directly on the floor. This is preparation training for potential chemical attack. It's our pharmacist, it's our physician. Here it's you see that during air alert we are staying inside of our clinic, but in the place without window, in the most safe place, let's say, in the way. This is also we are during the night in our shelter on the floor of our clinic. A few words about our COVID site, as it also situated in the downtown of Kiev. Nothing happened, so we continue our studies. In fact, at that time we have only one ongoing study with 100 healthy volunteers. It's COVID prevention study. So nothing happened with source documentation, PK samples, and in general, clinic continued their work. But temporarily, this hospital was switched to the military service. But anyway, we continue with everything. And situation with local ethics committee, as with our main clinic, nothing happened, so they continue with their meetings and other things.
Hello.
And I would like to show you several examples how we did and what we did. So one of the examples, it's phase 2 study in post-COVID pulmonary fibrosis. Before the war, we dosed, randomized almost 40 patients in this study. Our site been the top recruiter in this study, and on the 23rd of February, we had 26 patients ongoing. Till May, we only 4 patients been discontinued, but 22 finished completely the study. And out of all studies we did, only 6 visits we missed. So what important things, what adjustment we did during the, of course, by approval by ethics committee and sponsor, we used phone contacts instead of patient visit in some cases. Also, we switched to local laboratories as we have patients from different cities of Ukraine. So they send us lab reports from their cities, and the same option with MRI. So they electronically send us results, and we upload those results to sponsors. And also we used alternatives for delivery of IMP to the patients, and also alternative of shipments to our site. So current status of the study: all patients successfully finished the study. Even one patient returned from the front line. And one, let's say, example, it's not one study, but in our oncology clinic, we've been running 6 oncology phase 1 studies, and as I mentioned before, this clinic was closed, occupied, territory been occupied, and we relocate all our patients, first of all, to our clinic in downtown, and 15 patients we transferred from Ukraine to Moldova. So the decision to transfer patient been taken by sponsor on March of 4th, and first dosing we did on March of 23rd. You can ask why it's so long, but this is not in fact long, because it was first of all a lot of things to discuss, to find the way how to deliver patient from Ukraine to Moldova, and to do a lot of regulatory things behind that. First of all, to get approval in Moldova by their regulatory authority, also by ethics committee, the same to do here in Ukraine, just to announce to our regulator and also ethics committee, also to prepare new version of informed consent, also to take care about insurance for the patients, also to organize transportation and a lot accommodation for the patients. So it was really hard work. And from a point of view of sponsor, it's also not easy to do, because they should change everything in our IWRS system, also to change source documentation. We should copy everything and to deliver together with this patient to another site. So it was really hard work. And current status, that patient, of course, would like to go back to Ukraine, and now we are working in another direction. So we now moving patient, shifting them from Moldova to Ukraine. It's again the same work to all of us, to change, to inform about that regulatory authority, also to continue with the patients, to get medication, to change in all those systems we use in the studies. And this is a recent example. So some sponsors decided to restart their studies in Ukraine. And one of the studies is phase 2 colitis, ulcerative colitis study. In the beginning, we planned to get 8 patients. It was approved by sponsor. We did 2 patients before the war. Sponsor paused recruitment since the start of the war. And on 19th of July, sponsor decided to restart recruitment in Ukraine. It's, by the way, biotech company from United States. And the same next day, we already have 11 pre-screened patients. You see that at that time, it was not so many open sites. And of course, patients need some medical service. And this is why we've been quite lucky to have so many patients. And in August, we started with dosings. And in the very beginning of September, we fully closed dosing and study recruitment closed overall in the study. Now we have 10 active patients. They continue without any problems. So according to the protocol scheduling, including even shipments of ambient samples to central labs in Europe. So now it's not a problem. It's longer, of course, but not that difficult. So current status of our company, of our clinic, we have 42 people in our team. You see, it's unfortunately 50% of our staff. Some of them now, some moved to another country, some decided not to go in Orense, somebody stayed with the other cities of Ukraine, but half of the team partly work to continue medical service here. We have now 19 ongoing studies and 2 of them recruiting. And 2 studies seems to be resume enrollment very soon. In total, 256 patients we have ongoing patients, and they not only from Kyiv but from different cities of Ukraine. And we have from 5 to 15 patients visit per day. So in general situation, and I would like to mention what our president Volodymyr Zelensky said several times, that Russia has brought such problems to Ukraine and Europe that that could not have imagined just a few months ago. This is actual complete absence of oncology treatment or problems with access to insulin for diabetes patients. It's impossible to perform surgical operations. He said this in May. Now situation is improving, of course, but anyway, it's quite difficult. And since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Russian Federation into Ukraine, the military of aggressor country destroyed 570 health care facilities, 101 hospitals were completely destroyed. This is also information from the beginning of summer. Now I guess it's even more. So clinical trials receive even increased role to help fighting the humanitarian crisis and prove continued treatment access and patient care in Ukraine. So it's a few pictures we did during the summer when we have some stabilization here. And you see that team is here, we are working, we have our routine meetings, we have patient visits. Also, we had visit of German ambassador to our clinic, and she was also astonished, but how we did, what we did, that we are been not stopping during the war. You see that our physicians doing the conference and examine patients. So we are almost back to normal business life, and also we are also almost back to our own private life. You see, we have our physician delivered nice lady, and we also celebrate. We also making gifts. It's kind of celebration, the birthday of one of our employees, and for example, our medical director receiving charity diploma. So life is almost back to normal life, but you see that this morning again shown us that this war is continue, and horrible enemy near our borders and in our country, and war is continue, and it's still not easy life. But I'm pretty sure that Ukraine will survive and everything will be fine. So thank you so much. I would be really happy to answer any questions from you.
Thank you very much for your nice presentation, and so with moving, heartbreaking pictures of the people living in this city under a very difficult situation. So Is there any questions from the participants? Please raise your hand or unmute. Is there any question? So,
It's Sandy here from Australia.
yeah, please.
It's an interim question. I noticed that you started clinical studies and it broke down during the war, and then you started the clinical studies again. I'm sort of curious, what is the transition? Did you start your studies again? Or what is the transition when you wanted to bring people back to start studies again? Have I made that clear?
Yeah, thank you so much. You see that situation is the following. Some sponsors decided to fully stop clinical trials. So it means that also active patients unfortunately been stopped. And this is a disaster because it's, in some cases it's oncology studies and patient had no access to modern medications at all, to modern service. But some sponsors just put on hold screening of new patients and randomization dosing of new patients. Meanwhile, half of the sponsors decided to continue with active patients. So it was not like full stop of the research. So we continue and seeing that Ukraine is a really big country. So war is ongoing, its effect, yeah. But for example, we are quite far, relatively far from the front line. It's around 500 kilometers, and life in Kiev till this morning was quite normal. And this is why a lot of sponsors decided to restart their activities and to restart, because Ukraine is well known in the world as a topest high recruiter. And some studies is really can't even move forward without our support, without our recruitment. This is why sponsors more and more often think in direction to restart operations in Ukraine. We organized everything together with couriers, with local laboratories, with our research society. We did a lot of job with our regulator, and we are improving situation also, meaning for the research. As I said, in the very beginning, we had no chance even to send out anything from Ukraine. Now, couriers deliver ambient samples to central labs during 48 up to 72 hours. So it's okay. It's no planes, no air delivering, but ground transportation works pretty well. So I can't say about stop of operations, stop of the research. We continue with the patients, and now it's more situation becoming better and better.
The question really my pose was, we don't have the experience. You start a protocol, you start beginning and then you go on to end. But now we have an example which you've explained, that you start your clinical study, then it gets broken, and then you have to almost start again to see what that whether that has implications for the protocol and what the studies are being done, how they're being processed.
Sander, unfortunately I almost missed a lot of words, so please could you say it again, because it's
with pleasure. If we start a clinical study, we normally start it and we go through a process by sticking to the process. But in a situation of war, what seems to happen is patients leave, you lose momentum, you can't get drugs, or you move them to other situations. It interferes with the protocol. So it's something for us to learn from changing the protocol in an interim period when the protocol gets changed or shifted.
A decision been made study by study, case by case. In some cases, as I said, for example, we started to use local safety labs instead of using central lab. Our clinic is mainly concentrated on phase 1, so PK samples, yeah, we just frozen those PK samples. They survived here in our clinic. So we just sent them out later on. So right now, those days. And in general, it was not the majority of our studies in our clinic. I'm of course talking about our clinic, been not that much interrupted. So we had some our site receiving everything directly to our site. So we don't have any warehouse in Ukraine. So we accept direct shipments. This is why we had all supplies before the war. In 1 month, we restarted to receive lab kits, whatever, medication. So in fact, there were not that many protocol violations or protocol deviations. So we tried to keep procedures visit by visit according to schedule. Okay, in some cases we used phone contacts instead of patient visits, but in fact, there were not that many. Okay, sometimes we been not in the windows of allowed by the protocol visits time frame. Yes, it been, but mostly we kept, of course, safety is the first, and we tried to do as in line with protocol as much as possible. So
wonderful. Thanks very much for your insight and experience.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to, I wanted to ask the same kind of question that very shortly, that I suppose that there may be some kind of intention of the sponsor company, not only their wish to continue the clinical trial or provide experimental therapy for the patient, but also there may be some kind of intention to keep the infrastructure of clinical trial in Ukraine. How is your impression or actual situation?
Yeah, thank you so much for your question. In fact, in the most of the cases, in majority of the cases, all sponsors clearly understand the situation here, and they try to support in many different ways. Some of them even decided, we had several cases when patients immigrated from Ukraine by themselves without our, let's say, direction. So they decided just to move in the very first days of the war. So the sponsor been informed about that, and we found solution how to shift patients to the hospitals who are not participating in the trial. So it was just to take care of the patients, to provide service, medical service to them. And we have financial support from the sponsor. So they are asking us what we need, what maybe some equipment we need. So it's a lot of different ways of support. And in fact, if we're talking about again Kyiv, I don't know what's going on in other cities, but I am here in Kyiv. Almost all clinics here are fully operational, meaning laboratories, meaning MRI centers, and big institutions, hospitals, whatever. So here we have everything as usual, let's say, in this way. We have also sponsors provided additional medications to us, not only within the clinical trials, but other medications we need. Now supply more or less fine here. We have no shortage of medications. It's my experience. I don't know, maybe in other clinics it's different story. So now we are covered pretty well. So again, we are doing our studies almost like before the war.
Thank you very much. So we wish to continue discussion, but we have to move to the next presentation. So thank you very much to convey very important message. So next speaker is Dr. Veronica Patsko. She is a clinical oncologist, National Cancer Institute in Kyiv, Ukraine. So please, Veronica, share your slide.
Hello, dear colleagues. Just a second, I will share my presentation. So, my name is Veronica. I'm a clinical oncologist at National Cancer Institute. National Cancer Institute is the biggest oncological center, governmental oncological center in Ukraine. So mainly we consult more than 100,000 patients per year. Here we have 20 surgical rooms where we perform thousands of surgeries, and of course, it is clinical trials, it's commercial clinical trials, and also our local. And so before the 24th of February, as it was already said by colleagues, in Ukraine, there were a lot of clinical trials in different spheres, mainly oncology, but also it is rheumatology and therapy and so on. And on the moment of 24th of February in Ukraine, there were 120 ongoing oncological studies, and over 80 of them were ongoing in National Cancer Institute in different departments. So on 24th of February, the really terrible things started. And so on these photos, you can see the chronology that it was happening in the Kyiv. So you can see like people were moving western, some of them were moving abroad, and well, a lot of people were scared. And on that day, we had to start a new phase of clinical trials, so clinical trial during the war. So it came together with the clinical care, with the medical care, but also clinical trial is a part of treatment. So especially in oncology, when we had a lot of patients who require new types of treatment, so we needed to start something new. So there were issues that I tried to combine like in groups that were very important to decide, and I will talk about them later. So the first is information. We need to assess our capacities, our staff capacities, because it was really important, because not everyone could get on the work, not everyone could continue. They needed to save their families, their kids. So some of staff moved. The need of supplies, the need to save the data, because it is very important in clinical trials. And of course, everything was about the safety of personnel, safety of patients, safety of data. So information, I called it like a period of letters and calls. It was very important for us, for doctors, to know where patients are, whether they're safe, whether they can get to the center, to the clinic, whether they can get the medical care, and inform them what to do next. So in case they're safe, they can get to the clinic, we inform them whether we can continue their treatment. And the second was to inform all team members. We needed to know where all we are, what for whom we can rely on this period, who are staying in Ukraine, who are moving abroad, who are moving a western part, because for a few months half of our team they moved to the western part of Ukraine, so we only could have calls from them, but they could continue care of patients who also moved to the western part. So part of our patients, they moved, and our doctors who moved there, they could continue. And also inform sponsors that we are continuing working, we can provide them information, we can provide them supplies. So, and on this photo you can see, so most of the photos will be from my own. So it was the period when we have this bombing, and in the corridor I was working with a laptop, just writing the letters, a lot of letters. There was really a lot of job to do like this. So then capacities. Whole period starting from the 24th of February, National Cancer Institute didn't stop its work at all. So we worked every day, 24/7, and these photos, you can see the basement. It was supplied by water. The beds were moved on the basement of National Cancer Institute, and on the first days, we continued treatment just underground for patients to be safe. And also one bone marrow transplantation was performed just underground because patient was already on for this procedure. This procedure was planned for 24, so we couldn't postpone it. Moreover, there was a problem, as Eugene said on his presentation, that a lot of clinics which are actually in Kyiv district, they were closed due to occupation of that area, due to problems with roads, and a lot of patients who were treated there before the war, they required oncological help on this period, and they were looking for any oncologic clinic who can continue this work. So and well, starting from the beginning of the March, we just moved from the basement. We moved on our just floors in rooms without windows. So we continued our work at the beginning, not as normal, but we tried to came back to normal stuff. You can see, yes, it was a big problem because a lot of medical staff, especially nurses, they live in Kyiv region, so they couldn't get on work because there were bombing and tanks and troops on the roads, so they couldn't get into Kyiv. So Kyiv was mostly isolated. Only one road was left to leave Kyiv and or to come to there on the first month. So other areas, they were very dangerous to go inside. So you can see the doctors, so me, myself, and these are doctors on these photos, they were performing drugs to continue treatment of patients. So because there were no nurses, I am as a doctor, I needed to examine patients, to took blood tests, to make the drug for them, and then to control the infusion. So there was really a lot of works, and most of doctors they did that. So there were mostly doctors who were performing whole cycle of treatment. Talking about supplies, and yes, I would like to remind that I'm not talking only about the general work of National Cancer Institute as an oncological clinic. It is also about a clinical trial. So everything like that was done. All the parts of clinical trials were done as this because we needed to collect biological samples and to work with that, and we needed to provide patients with drugs from clinical trial. So there were we had a pharmacist from blinded teams, from the unblinded team, and me, and then some other doctors from other departments who continued this like clinical trials, and also yeah, because there was no general medical staff like nurses, so there was a lot of work for doctors, but we continued to do it according to the protocol to avoid protocol deviations. Our local laboratory performed all the tests that were required, and also we had an MRI machine and CT and we could continue it according to the schedule. As for supplies, well, we are lucky enough to be the biggest center, so there were a lot of supplies in our depots, local depots, that we had it enough even to share it with patients from other sites. So some sponsors, they decided that patients, for example, from Kharkiv, which was really severely bombed during the first period and it's continuing, they were moved to Kyiv, for example, and they just told us which medication we can give for them in this clinical trial. So because usually clinical trials, they are ongoing in 5 or 6 or 10 cities of Ukraine. So we have like different sites, and we can move patients from site to site in one clinical trial. Some part of Kyiv patients, for example, they were moved to the western part of Ukraine, and some from eastern part of Ukraine, they were moved to the Kyiv, and we could continue their treatment because we have enough supplies. And it was really a big problem for the first month because there was problem with couriers. Nobody could bring it to us, but luckily we had it enough of drugs though, so we just covered this period. And then when courier companies started to work again, when central depots started to work again, we could get new deliveries of drugs. So yeah, also about the supplies. So on the 24th of February, all flights, all civil flights stopped, and there was a problem with the delivery because it took more time and it was difficult, as I already said, especially in Kyiv. There was only one road left that could be used for the civil transplantation for the first period, and also there were queues on the border, and it was difficult for sponsors to deliver the drug and also to deliver back the, for example, biological samples from sites to the central laboratories. And yeah, also a lot of men went to army, so that were not enough workers for that. But now it's not so, as Eugene also already said. So we are now working almost as it was before the war, only, well, we still have no flights. As for data, it was very important for us to have an access to the internet, access to the source documentation, and safety of source documentation on sites, because some sites in Ukraine were bombed. They had fires in their buildings, so probably some source documents they didn't survive. But in National Cancer Institute, there was no problem with electricity. There was no problem to the access of source documentations, and there were enough doctors to put this information into the ECRFs. And yeah, well, talking about the National Cancer Institute, it was safe. So our building wasn't bombed directly. Yeah, as for biological samples, also, we were lucky enough to have uninterrupted power supplies all the time. So we had no problems with the electricity. So all the samples, they survived this period until sending, until courier companies worked again. So everything was quite safe. So there were no protocol deviations, even during the hardest period. But yes, it was problem with kit supply for the first few months. But now it's also absolutely fine, almost as it was before the war. So this is the map of attacks on Ukraine. Data was took yesterday. So as you can see, and as my colleagues already said, so Ukraine is quite a big country, and there is a big distance for battlefield and for other cities in which a lot of clinics which participate in the clinical trials, not only oncological but oncological as well. So the distance is quite big, and we can continue to perform clinical trials almost as it was before the war. We have really high demand from patients who require this help. For example, I can give you a really simple example from oncology. So for example, people with melanoma, we have an immunotherapy for them. So we provide it, but in case they are progressed, we have no treatment for them, only clinical trials, but we have no clinical trials. And there are a lot of patients who require new treatment, which is not registered yet, for example, because they used all their probabilities of treatment that we have in here. And some of them can't move abroad, for example, because they have kids, they have parents, probably old parents, and they can't move abroad for treatment, but they need it here. And well, as for me, I'm very often patients ask me about that. So they call to our center and they ask whether we have clinical trials, and we just say, well, now all the clinical trials were stopped. Only active patients, they continue their treatment in the clinical trial. We don't recruit, we don't screen, we don't randomize. So approximately, it is statistics from National Cancer Institute, 10% of our patients in clinical trials were moved abroad in other sites with the same protocol and continue treatment in the clinical trial in there. Now we have a higher request from patients, because patients from territory which were occupied, they come more Western, so or in Kyiv or in Lviv, for example, or in cities where it is more peaceful currently, where it is more calm right now, and they're asking about treatment. So we need to treat even more patients, and so there is the higher demand actually. And due to, as it was during the COVID period, now also there was a big gap in diagnostics and treatment, and a lot of patients who could be treated on more earlier stages, for example, in February, they missed this chance, and now they have advanced diseases, and they require, we require also for advanced diseases, there are, according to the international guidelines, we need to include these patients in the clinical trials for them to have a more opportunity to live longer. Yeah, as it also was already said by a colleague, and I will repeat myself, that now our workforces are almost the same as it was before the war. So we are working in our general routine, and well, it is relatively safe for both and patients and staff to continue working like as it was, as we used to. And also, as I already said, that patients are moving and they require this help. So there is a high demand, and there is possibility of from our side to continue a treatment like this. And we also can continue to provide shipment of biological samples, and to deliver, sponsors can deliver drugs with temperature control in here. So it is absolutely possible as it was before. Here is the phrase, it is like military and joke or something like this. So being Ukrainian is not to only to be ready for the end of the world, but also have plans for the future. But today also I would like to make some updates regarding the situation in Kyiv, and just to remind that war is still ongoing in here. So that was the morning today. It's just photos made few hours ago, and there it is like city center of Kyiv. It's city. In the front there is a Crescentic street, so it's the main road of Kyiv, and that was here. 80 rockets were through to many cities of Ukraine, and they bombed the whole country. And I would like also to show you a few videos. On the left, it is a kindergarten ground near the kindergarten in the city center. Is the really city center. So you can see the consequences of bombing. And here you can see a date and time. It is city center. This is the bridge named by our major. And so that was our morning today. So please stay with Ukraine and support Ukraine. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and we should see this kind of awful situation. That is an extremely unacceptable situation that is a violation of international humanitarian law. We should prohibit this kind of action of the invasion of Russian troops. So it is precious opportunity to see this kind of situation through our discussion on the status of the clinical trial. So Francis, please start. Your question or a comment?
Dr. Veronica, thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm thinking, where is the rest of the world today? They should be watching these presentations. I'm sorry. War is not simply a military action. It's not simply armies and weapons, but it's also people fighting for their lives. And you people here are on the front line. You are on the front line. You are as much fighting for your country and for lives as the soldiers are there. That last video is terrible. That's absolutely terrible. If I recall correctly, that's the bridge to the peace monument between Russia and Ukraine. It's an absurdity. I think it's very important what you're doing and the work you do. I think it's heroic work. And thank you very much for coming here today to share this with us.
Thank you very much for your support, for your attention to our situation. You are correct regarding this monument, but well, it's already called not that, as you said. So there is no further friendship between our people. So well, they're just terrorizing our civil cities. Today there were 10 bomb attacks which came into the city. There is the 10 dead people, and while we were talking, it is already 11. So one person died in the hospital during our talk, and it is kids among them. So it was just civilian people who are going to their works in the city center with no military objects at all in there. There is a central university, Ukrainian university. There is a museums in that region. So we just have a hole in the road and 10 dead bodies. So yeah, but well, talking. So at least we continue to live and talking about our main topic in this talk. So I think my colleagues from which presented before, they will agree with that. So now, well, today till 5 in the morning, the situation was, well, it was a little bit different. So it was almost calm in here in this city. So there was a problem in the eastern part of Ukraine. Of course, there were a lot of problems. We have our soldiers dying there for our freedom, for our democracy. Yes, but we continue to make science. We continue to develop. During the war, for example, in National Cancer Institute, we put new one, linear accelerator. For example, we opened a new department, neurosurgical department. So we continue to develop, and well, life here is continuing. We can't just freeze and stop doing things.
Thank you very much. And I suppose that in such kind of terrible situation, that because the National Cancer Institute have many international networks, so there would be some kind of support from international community. Okay, so is there any other question?
Jacob, may I add
thank you very much.
One word to Veronica explanation of situation of Kyiv. I just want to say and show you when this missile fall down into this completely civilian object. This is a bridge, this bridge for walking, for nice view. I know that in Japan, it's very good culture for view, understanding of nature. And this bridge was the same. And this bridge is glass bridge. And after this missing, which you see, this bridge is alive. This bridge is staying. So Ukraine is like this bridge. We are looking like a glass, but we are stronger than metal, than steel. So that's why. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your very important comment. Okay, so so if there's no any urgent comment, so we'll take a break here, and so we should take a break. The break should be about 3 minutes or a little bit more. So we will meet again. So 3 minutes later. So thank you very much. So Chandra is the first commentator after the break. So please prepare your slide. Thank you very much.
Chieko, do you see my slides?
Yes, I can see your slide. So please go to the first one.
Yeah.
So, okay, if you are ready, we would like to open the next session.
I'm ready.
I'm sorry for this kind of very short break, but I
think if possibly 1 minute longer, because people need 1 minute at least to go back and forth.
No. Okay, anyway, we would like to start the comment and discussion session, and we can extend the time frame than the expected ending time, but many of you may have some other business, and some of one we wish to continue discussion. Please a little bit. We would like to extend a little bit. So, Shandor, please introduce yourself and start your comment.
Thank you very much, Chieko, for the introduction. And also I would like to thank you and for the Japanese Bioethics Society for inviting me to this very important meeting. I think that we all agree that the most horrible interaction in human society is a war. This war also showed that, but this war was, from scientific point of view, in a way exceptional because it destroyed and caused the disruption of many international clinical trials. So I think that the people working in drug development should now look very carefully on the effect of the Ukraine war on the international drug development. What can we learn from that to manage clinical trials better in catastrophic situations? This is the goal of my presentation. During the war, we have many clinical trials were stopped both in Ukraine and in Russia due to the economic sanctions which were introduced as an answer to the savage attack of Russia on Ukraine. But the situation became very different in the two countries. In Ukraine, during the war, many of these trials were interrupted only just for a very short time. The enormous resilience we just have heard in the lectures before given by the Ukrainian colleagues resulted in the rapid resumption of trial activity. Many clinics continued to accrue patients. Unfortunately, in the departments which were destroyed or the physician and patient had been killed, they have to stop trial activity, but many of the patients could be transferred to other Ukrainian centers. And now we see that most of the trial activities are resumed and are carried further. In Russia, the situation is very much different. The trial stopped due to economic sanctions because in the economic sanctions, all large pharmaceutical companies were asked to stop marketing interaction with Russia and also to stop trial activities. Practically all of the large companies followed this request, and the trials were the accrual of patients were immediately stopped. However, neither the hospitals nor the patient or physician were destroyed or killed. So actually, medical activities could continue to go on. Nevertheless, most of the international trials stopped very rapidly because of the lack of further investigation of medical drug supply, the stop of transport and the transport of biosample for the international companies, and also the contact with the sponsor was severed. As it seems, the stopping of international clinical trials in Russia will have a much longer effect on the community, because due to the distrust which develops during the war, it will take a very long time until the trials could be resumed. If possible, after some time, there will be a peace again. So the development will be very different, and many, many trials are lost forever, which is a loss finally for the international community for developing drugs. Now, the ethics working group of IFAP, which is an International Federation of Association of Pharmaceutical Physicians, very early, already in March, began to discuss the problems related in clinical trials in Ukraine and also in Russia. We concluded that most serious immediate danger for trial participants might be the abrupt closing of trials by the sponsors and possibly abandoning patients who already received treatment. And actually, we heard in the comment of Yevgeny that several companies did exactly this and rapidly stopped their trials, even ongoing treatment of patients. This is, according to our opinion, one of the most difficult problems at the start of a disaster, when we do not know what is the situation. We try to understand the size of the effect and the effect of the disaster. At this chaotic situation, the pharmaceutical physicians performing clinical trials in these places are left alone. Mostly their contact with the companies are severed. They have to make their own decision according to their understanding of GCP and for the benefit of patients. So we came up with a recommendation regarding how to manage trial patients in the early phase of human-made or natural catastrophes. I would like to emphasize here that we included natural catastrophes into our discussion because a war and the natural catastrophes are causing similarly great effects on the population and on the environment and on the society. So our recommendation of the IFAP Ethics Working Group is that participants already receiving trial treatment during a disaster should be considered as a vulnerable patient group. This suggestion is based on the science recommendation, which actually essentially states that a vulnerable patient population is defined according to the circumstances in which the patient population is at that time. We think at the start of a war, this patient population who already committed to participate in a clinical trial is a patient population. Sponsors and clinicians have a great responsibility toward these patients because the patients have all their hope in the ongoing clinical trials to which they gave their informed consent. So our recommendation is that if possible, the continuation of already initiated trial treatments for the benefit of the patients is a primary ethical obligation of clinical investigators in case of war, economic sanctions, what we have seen in Russia, or during natural catastrophe. We think that this short statement and short recommendation is for the benefit of the patient and is primarily relevant at the early phases of disaster when the situation is chaotic, it's not yet known the extent of the damage, so and also the contact with the sponsors are mostly disrupted. So the pharmaceutical physicians have to make their own decision in case of each individual patient according to their best scientific knowledge and ethical understanding. We hope that this recommendation will be used in later catastrophe affecting clinical trials. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Chandra, for your comment. So next commentator is Kotone Matsuyama. So Chandra is, so Chandra, could you stop just sharing?
Yes, that is what I try. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Kotone, could you share your slide? So Chandra is previous chairman of this ethics working group of IFAP, and Kotone is new chairman of this working group. So could you share your slide?
Yes, thank you. But the question with the host.
Sorry, host, where is you? Your name? I'm sorry, I have to search for your name.
Yeah,
Where is it?
Not yet.
I'm sorry, I cannot find. So I found it. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. So is it in the presentation mode?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chieko, and for your introduction. And I am Kotone Matsuyama, and a clinical pharmacologist in charge of the research governance at the Nippon Medical School, which is in a private medical university in Tokyo. And I would like to give you a brief introduction about the IFAP, the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Medicine, and yes, so let's start. This is the IFAP and the International Federation of Associations of Pharmaceutical Physicians and the Pharmaceutical Medicines. So the IFAP was founded in 1975, and then contributes to the promote the pharmaceutical medicines in various countries. Currently, 27 countries from all over the world, including Europe and Asia and America and the African countries are participating in IFAP. And Chieko and Shandel and Francis for participating today belongs to the ethics working group. And the ethics working group works on the ethical issues in pharmaceutical medicine. And so we are collaborating with the science or the Jabra MA, and also the Ukraine support research support initiatives. And the ethics working group has contributed to our news letter that Shandel mentioned before, and the IFAP today, and then published two wait a minute, three IFAP today articles here. And also we have published two papers on ethical issues in clinical trials in the conflict situations in Ukraine. And we will also have the session with an Ukrainian conflict within the DIA or the Japan Association for the Bioethics, and also the annual meeting which will be held next week in Athens, Greek, and here is the session named titled with an Ukrainian war crisis impact on clinical trials. So if you can participate, please enjoy this session. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Koto. So there is a continuing discussion in ICPM, our annual conference. So next commentator is Francis. Francis, you would like to share your slide? So after Francis, Dr. Menikov will make a presentation. So please make your comment. So okay, so you use a slide, no?
Yes, I will use my slide. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and thank you to all the members really of the Japanese Association for Bioethics. I prepared some slides, maybe too many, but I really wanted to prepare my thoughts for today, and so I say too much. Because this is a meeting with members of the Japanese Association for Bioethics, I also want to say something specifically about ethics and clinical research. And I'll say something too about situationally adaptive clinical trials. And then I want to talk about open science, because open science is it's a bit of a buzzword today. It's very popular, but I also think it's very important. And so I want to say something about that as well. I'll start with just by saying something about the Ukraine Clinical Research Support Initiative. Really, it's because of Victoria that we started this, and we're still small. We never got organized. I haven't done enough. But we wanted to respond to the situation in Ukraine, and we wanted to specifically around clinical research. As it turns out, I think we're really the only group, and that's all of us who are meeting today and those who have come together in other meetings, who have really focused on clinical research and what is happening with clinical research during this terribly destructive period. So we wanted to bring communication, and I have to say, IFAP has been absolutely incredible with this. The DIA has been incredible with this, but mostly it's all our colleagues and from Ukraine who have really were so generous to take the time to try to instruct us on this, to try to ensure, and we learn so much from what they're doing. We think really that what's most important is to support this clinical research enterprise, and I'll try to discuss why as we go on here. I think what we learned from Ukraine is that research is not something extra. It's not something we do as a luxury. It's an essential part of society. It's important for medicine. It's important for science. It's important for education. It's a profession, as we see today, and as we've heard from real professionals who are really dedicated to what they do. And it's an essential part of public health. I think a lot of us think that, well, this is just, we can do without clinical research, that clinical research, clinical trials are just some kind of luxury that we have in our societies. It's not true. If we don't have clinical research in our societies, we don't have good functioning public health systems. It's surely a fact. And it's been shown over and over again. And the industry, the clinical research industry, contributes so much to society and is so important to society. I spent last week in Munich with a clinical trials conference in Europe, and you can see the countries fight to have clinical trials. They want to have clinical trials because it's so important for the well-being of the country. So I think it's impossible to imagine a healthy society without a healthy medical research enterprise. And I want to say something about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because I think human rights have been so abused and misused by people with regard to research and what's going on in Ukraine and with what's going on in the entire war situation that I wanted to come to it. This is the preamble of the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. Preamble, whereas the recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. So disregard and contempt for human rights, even by people who advocate for human rights, results in barbarous acts. And this freedom is so critically important. And that freedom includes science. So everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms. And we cannot abandon people because of the situation that they find themselves in, without distinction of any kind. And you can go back and read the Universal Declaration. Everyone has the right freely to participate in cultural life, which includes science and the benefits of science. So these are the justifications we give for clinical research. Normally we say there's two things you need to justify clinical research. Originally we said, coming out of the Nuremberg situation, where we saw that research was done in a barbarous way, as part of war, not as part of something that's integral to society. We said informed consent was needed. Then we went on in the 1960s to say, no, informed consent is not sufficient. We need something more, right? We need also to have external review, so ethics review. But there's more. As the Declaration of Helsinki says, there is a requirement to continually improve our knowledge and tools for responding to disease, suffering, and healthcare. And this is a requirement we don't do just because it's a luxury or we can do it in a peaceful, stable environment. We need to do science even in disruptive environments. We need to do it today in Kiev. And the assurance is that the results of research will be used to improve the medical community's response to disease. And that is what we heard in each of the presentations today. That's why we're doing the research, because patients need it, because the community needs it. So ethics must consider the needs of and the needs for research and science with regard to populations and their situations. Now, just to say, I mean, what's going on in Kiev today is just unacceptable. It's just what's going on since March is completely unacceptable. Ukraine has spent 25 years building a clinical research infrastructure. It's part of the country. They built excellent ethics committees. Victoria spoke about that today. They built excellent regulatory environment. Both Victoria and Eugenie responded to that, and we saw that in Veronica's presentation as well, too. The clinical trials enterprise has contributed significantly to the wealth and prosperity of Ukraine. Nobody is going to deny that. It is part of Ukraine's self-identity. It's part of their understanding of them being part of Europe, of them being part of this European enterprise. It's essential to them. And the clinical research enterprise is vital to Ukraine. It's not something in addition. It's not something extra. And it's vital to the patients that are in those trials today. And I think it's simply worthy of support. So in a paper that Kieko, myself, and Sandor and others participated in writing, Goto, we discussed the need for situationally adaptive clinical trials. We have this idea that clinical trials should be adaptive. We want clinical trials to be adaptive. And that is where the design allows for modifications after the initiation of the trial, without undermining the validity and the integrity of the trial. And what's the purpose of this? The purpose of this is to be more flexible within the clinical trial and more efficient. But what we have always talked about with regard to adaptive design is adaptive within the clinical trial. What we learn as we do the clinical trial, we adjust the clinical trial. I think what Ukraine teaches us is that we also need to be adaptive to the situation in which the clinical trial appears. And so now we need to rethink and redesign our clinically adaptive or adaptive design models for clinical trials that are also fit for purpose. We need to be adaptive to the changing situation of the trial. We need to respond to disruptions as Evgeny and Veronica are doing now as we speak, and their colleagues are doing now on the front lines of these clinical trials to the disrupted situations. We need to reimagine and redesign our clinical trials so that they're situationally adapted by design, that they're fit for purpose, that they're adaptive to the needs of study populations, and that they assure that the study as designed is adapted or adaptable to the changing and evolving circumstances that bear upon both the populations in the study, but also the conduct of the study. So really, health science needs to prepare for, learn from, and respond to this disruptive crisis, disaster situations, as Shandor said today. We cannot think that we're only do science in a stable environment where we see it as the luxury that we can afford. Let's say this. So clinical research, data, and responding to disruption, health threats, national disasters, and geopolitical disruptions, like we're talking about today, can lead and do lead to significant clinical trials disruptions. So we need, as we see in these two important reports, one from Transcelerate that came about during COVID. I'm sorry, yeah, that was COVID, that's 2021 actually, the clinical study report considerations there, is that we need, and these two reports, one from Transcelerate and the other from ACRO and Transcelerate, just published in September, show us in a certain way. They give us, especially the one from Transcelerate in 2021, the first one there, they show us how we can adopt our clinical research, how we can report our clinical research, have oversight of the clinical trials, else the state expert committee is demonstrating that that's possible, has demonstrated that that's possible in Ukraine throughout the war, and care for the safety of the participants, care for the care of the participants, while also protect the integrity of the data and the data itself. So I just want to say something here about UNESCO's recommendation on open science, which came out at the end of last year. And this is really interesting because this is the preamble. And again, this is the very opening of this recommendation on open science. And why do we have open science? It says because we recognize the urgency of addressing complex and interconnected environmental, social, and economic challenges for people, including in these spiraling, and that's what we're seeing today here, situations. This is why we need open science, and this is why we need science, period. This is the second paragraph. It talks about the vital importance of science to respond to these challenges and to promote democracy and peace. We don't stop doing science because there's conflict. And we leave no one behind with regard to access to science and benefits from scientific progress. I'm sorry, I've seen too much war rattling coming out of bioethicists and people like this in the West saying we have to exclude people from science. This is crazy. This is just absolutely wrong. We have to participate in science. We have to allow people to participate in science. Scientific knowledge, because by ensuring that the scientific knowledge, data, methods, and processes needed to respond to the present and future global health and other crises, and where is there a larger crisis than in Kiev today, are all openly available for all countries, including Ukraine. So this is what the recommendation is. The term science, it says, signifies the enterprise. And this is the term we've been using throughout our discussions too, because it is an enterprise. It's something that society takes up. It's not just individual scientists or individual organizations. It's an enterprise whereby humankind acting individually or in small or large groups makes an organized attempt in cooperation or in competition to bring together a coordinated form of knowledge. And thereby, and that's why we have to do this research, furnishes itself with the opportunity of using to its own advantage understanding of the processes and phenomena occurring in nature and society. And I want to say at one of our earlier meetings, a representative from the WHO said the disruption of clinical trials in Ukraine is not only a disruption of scientific knowledge and healthcare in Ukraine, it's a disruption of scientific knowledge across the world. Thus, for the purposes of this recommendation, open science is defined as an inclusive construct. And this is what we want. This is where we're going in science. Every country now is talking about open science and how to do it. And the purpose is to increase scientific collaborations and sharing of information for the benefits of science, but also for the benefits of societies. So just to close during this very important discussion on bioethics, and Japan understands this as well as anybody understands this. And I'm also very happy that Gloria is here today with us from where they have gone through terrible situations in war too, and Nandini from India. It's so important here. The fundamental duty of bioethics with respect to health-related research is to promote the integrity and practice of the scientific enterprise. That's why we do bioethics, in an environment that's universally open, without prejudice, and contributes to the public good. Yoko, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Francis, for your very important talk. So I'm sorry for Dr. Menikov. Could you share your slide? I'm very sorry that we cannot manage at a time. So as we planned. So, but I appreciate you so much to keep your participation until the end. So please start your
Thank
slide.
you, Dr. Carrera. And maybe just to keep us on time, I mean, I could actually skip the slides and just kind of be briefer, if that's okay with you. So anyhow, I want to particularly thank you and Dr. Crowley for allowing me to participate in this group. It's amazing to see the presentations and particularly the work that people in Ukraine have been doing during this wartime environment. It's amazing. And so what I want to say, and I think it's probably very much in line with what others have said, and particularly Dr. Crowley, but a little bit of a different tweaking just from the point of view of somebody mainly familiar with the US system, and particularly most of my time is spent trying to protect human subjects. And my overall thought is basically that, you know, looking at the two important papers that you and your colleagues put out in Frontiers in Modern Medicine, I think they're very important papers, and it's wonderful that you and this group have been doing this important work in terms of helping people in the future determine how to conduct research in wartime environments and helping understand what's going on in Ukraine. All of this will be very, very helpful as we move forward and try to figure out the right way to deal with these situations. And the one conclusion I come to, and it may be a little a minor tweaking of what the two papers go to, is that bottom line, I think there has to be a lot of flexibility in our rules. And I think that's consistent with the notion of adaptive, making clinical trials be adaptive. And in particular, I think the flexibility will depend on a clinical trial by clinical trial need to make decisions about what to do. Where again, in a slight way, it might differ from what the two papers talk about, because particularly one of them, even from the title, is talking about the ethical responsibility to continue investigational treatments. And I would basically, I probably come down a little bit more weakly in terms of how strong this ethical responsibility is, or more particularly, it will depend a great deal on the nature of the clinical trial. Because I think a starting point, if we're talking about investigational treatments, the starting point is that they're investigational for a reason. We don't yet know how good they are in terms of efficacy and in terms of the possible side effects for the participants in these trials. And that in general, I think, creates a great deal of flexibility on the part of the people conducting the clinical trials, the sponsors, everybody else, in terms of having this ability to make decisions about whether or not the clinical trial should or should not continue to operate, or to what extent it should be modified in one way or another based on difficult circumstances. And in this case, war is way up there in terms of a very difficult circumstance. I think we have a very good example to learn from in terms of what happened during the COVID pandemic, because what we saw, particularly in the early days, is we dramatically reshaped our clinical trial system across the world. And that meant actually stopping a lot of clinical trials that probably, again, involve new risks, where the new risks outweighed the possible benefits, both to the information that we learned from the trial and the possible benefits to the participants in these trials. So the bottom line is, I'm totally agreeing with the broad themes, I think, coming from a lot of people here in terms of it's a wonderful thing to be able to conduct the clinical trials. And absolutely, just because there's a war on, it doesn't mean we should lose sight of the importance of conducting clinical trials. But at the same time, the war creates a change in conditions. And we should be able, under our ethical rules, we should be able to account for that change in clinical conditions in terms of giving the people conducting these clinical trials a great deal of flexibility in the terms of determining how to change those clinical trials. And yes, in appropriate circumstances, how to terminate certain of the clinical trials. And whether or not that constitutes abandoning the participants in the trials, that's going to be very dependent on the nature of the clinical trial. But in making that determination, we do have to recognize these are clinical trials. If we're talking about stopping an investigational medication, again, you have to be flexible in terms of evaluating what is the actual benefit to the participants from continuing to get it, and what's the harm to them from perhaps stopping it. And that involves looking at what are their alternatives in this wartime situation, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I'll leave it at that. And again, thank you all for putting on this wonderful presentation, and for all the wonderful work everybody's doing, particularly everybody in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your extremely important comment from the view of the human participant protection. That is your important job and responsibility for not only US public, but also the world people engaged in clinical trial. So because Dr. Menikov provided the very excellent closing remarks, so although we wish to continue this session discussion with the participants, but the time I apologize, I cannot manage a planned time frame, so I apologize all of you that we cannot provide the discussion session with the participants. However, we wish to continue this kind of discussion session. We wish to postpone to the next web meeting with people participating here, and the new people. I hope that the new people are coming, and especially Ukrainian participants keep your health situation and keep your ordinary job and providing care for patients, and keep at most democracy of your country. So we all of us wish to support in this kind of in the form of this kind of small activities. So we would like to have next session for the continuing discussion with all of you and new participants. So thank you very much for all of you to participate this Bioethics Japanese Bioethics Association webinar, and I will keep you contact and to provide some following